Welcome back. You've been watching us on ASL Chennai Speaks Out. We now continue with our discussion on the differently inclined. Winnie, I'd like to start with you and ask you about how does it feel to actually be the way you are?
I came out when I was 17, and I told my parents probably 6 months later. And my first thought was to call my parents. I was at college at the time. My second thought was maybe that's not such a good idea. I grew up in Texas, which is a part of the southern part of the United States, a fairly conservative place.
Indeed.
So I knew there were people that would be judgmental, but I assumed because it felt so good and honest, what I knew, I assumed that my first thought was that my father would be so happy to know that I understood something new about myself and that I was so happy. And my second thought was, oh, no, he wouldn't be particularly happy about this. So I remember feeling very comfortable with myself, probably for the first time at that point in my life, in my adult life, and assuming that it meant that I would lose my family, my Indian community, my church, and my friends, and that I would need to figure out how to be a gay person in the world alone.
Did you in fact lose your family, Winnie?
Sort of. I still talk to my family. I love my family. My father asked me not to tell anyone, including my mother. From Kerala, I have a number of gay friends. Our parents know each other. None of us have told our parents' friends, or I haven't told any of my parents' siblings, because we've all been asked to keep the secret. But if they would just break the secret, they all have colleagues and support in the larger community.
Sunil, isn't it hard to do what Winnie's doing here? I mean, to keep it all under wraps, to keep it all a secret. How is it possible to actually live like that?
I think for me, like she said, it's very liberating when you come to terms with your sexuality. You feel like you can breathe, you know? It's like a sense of relief. I was very fortunate that my sister supported me. Being in Chennai and my family being in Kerala, I think the comfort is there in that I'm far away and I'm not doing my activism in Kerala and being out there in the media with my face. But to their dismay, I did that in Kerala also.
Right.
So they were like, oh God, isn't there anybody else who'd want to do this?
They probably see you on this show, Sunil. So you
They're fed up. They're fed up. They said, okay, you're so boring.
Magdalene, explain to us, are people who are different actually born that way, or is it a habit? Is it something that happens along the way? Give us your view on this.
It's certainly not a habit, Jennifer, nor is it something that one can learn. If I'm just going to be hanging around with Winnie, it doesn't mean that I'm going to become lesbian, no. So it's not something that you just learn or you just pick up. I think it's a person knows within. They know where their attractions are. And I find that especially young people, 16, 17, come to me with questions like, I'm attracted to other girls in my class. Is that wrong? I think by the age of 10, 11 or 12, people more or less know, a young person knows that I'm a little different. By 16, 17, 18, they're kind of coming to terms with it and they're more clearer that this is where I'm heading. So this is not something that is learned, picked up, or a habit.
Or developed?
Or developed. Mm-hmm. It's something that comes from within. Nobody taught us to be heterosexual, right? We just knew within.
Right. Marcus, what do you think about what Magdalene is telling us here?
I kindly disagree with what Magdalene is saying. She says it's kind of innate, inborn. I differ with that because the stage that she talked about, like 10 and going back to the 17 and all that stuff. If you look at the psychosexual development according to Freud, those are stages where children try to explain and express the concepts of where he talks about the Oedipus complex and all of that. Those are the stages where they try to explore the anal phase and eventually settle down. And she also said that there are lots of young people who walk up to her and say that they get attracted to the same sex. If that's a very question, if they have to ask and think that's not very right, I think there's something inside them telling them that's not very right. So, I mean, I wouldn't say it's not innate. It's absolutely learned and reinforced by the process of it.
So can we have your reaction to that?
Basically, I'm not a psychologist, so I mean, whatever education or whatever details I could probably gather are all very crude. absolutely crude. In the sense, it makes us believe that it's wrong.
Tell me, how did you say that the information you have is crude? I mean, I'd like to understand that. Where did you, how did you even say that? How do you even think that?
Let me tell you, I mean, after this Section 377, that was the first point of me to understand what all this is all about. In India, whatever I found was talks more about the ill aspects of it, but nothing talks about as a person they have to be this way. They've got a choice. That's why.
Sir, we were talking here about it being a way of life in the West. I mean, what about us? What about here in India? We've got 7.5% of the population.
So, see, the whole problem with our attitude to life and living is, we try to ape the West. What is right for the West need not be necessarily right for our social cultural ethos. But why make a hoo-ha about the whole thing? Right. They have a different sexual orientation. Fine, they themselves want to be a secluded community. They are themselves actually reeling under a sense of remorse and guilt about possibly a perverted mental, biological need. I'm not saying that we should discriminate them. The society, sex education, everything should be oriented towards actually educating about the people on what is homosexuality, right, what is right about it. I work with gays, I work with Filipinos who are gays, I work with them comfortably. If any gay were to make an advance towards me for forcible relationship, I would possibly land a very tight slap on his face, because that's not my nature.
Nobody is allowed to force their sexuality on anybody else. That's not something as a community we ever will approve of. I mean, every individual has his or her preference and choice and the way they want to lead their lives. For me, I don't know if it'll be easy for you to understand. Walking out of my house every day is a nightmare. I step onto the streets till I get to some mode of transport to get to my destination. I am harassed. I'm harassed emotionally, verbally, sometimes physically, and there's violence. So people I deal with this every day.
So people are nasty with you, Sunil? They're nasty?
They can be extremely nasty. Today, I have a very sensitive landlord, and he's agreed for me to stay there. The previous landlord was not so sensitive. The moment he realized my sexual orientation was different, I had to leave in 11 months. We deal with that every day. And it's not something that a straight person can fathom, that even accommodation is a problem, even education is a problem.
So, Magdalene, let's ask you, is this something we've developed and we've taken from the West, or is this some kind of biological perversion, if that's the right word, and I use it, you know, guardedly?
I don't think it's a perverse thing, and there's plenty of research to show it's not something that suddenly develops for an individual as well. It's not that suddenly they wake up and say, oh, this is me. It's not that. Because it's easy in a community with majority heterosexual people for those of us who are heterosexual to just naturally fall in and to just do whatever. But for those who are not, they'd rather be heterosexual. Come on, because look at it. Every single person who is from the sexual minority group I have known has all the time, they talk about abuse, they talk about all kinds of difficult situations when they finally realized. Right. So it's not easy being that way, and it's not easy to make that decision either, or come to that conclusion, let me put it that way.
Right. I'd like to go to the audience there and ask you, what do you think about what Sunil is facing on a daily basis? People being nasty, people ridiculing him, you know, people coming out, and he's explained to us something that he deals with on an everyday basis.
I basically feel society is being very rigid. They believe in believing one thing and going about that way. They don't believe in opening their eyes. I mean, if they are the majority, if they are different, the minority is feeling that we are different too. If we can be different, even they can be different. The fact is that we run away from the truth. We like to believe this is it. And if we could open our eyes to come in, no, then these people would probably come out.
Sir, do you think the problem lies with us?
I think in a place like Chennai, you place value on how much the society, you place your value on how much the society says about you. For example, if you are a landlord and you say that I have a sexually oriented person, a differently oriented person in my house, you're just worried what the other people would say. If you stood for your own rights and you don't place emphasis on what others decide who you are, I think if that change in mentality comes with people, that's when the society will change towards differently oriented people.
We'll come back to some of these points because we went out of our studio to meet some people who have made certain choices that are different from what is often seen as normal. Take a look at this.
Usually, if I'm going to tell somebody about my actual sexuality, it's somebody who I feel I can trust or want to. I don't bring it up, and I'm coy, in fact, in answering that question.
Like when I first realized that I am attracted to men is like 13 or 12. But I've identified, like accepted myself as gay, like that was like 3-4 years before.
The realization happened in the age of 12, but I could able to know myself maybe in the age of 5 or something like that.
என்னோட பிறப்பிலே வந்து எனக்கு அந்த உணர்வு வந்தது. எனக்கு 13 வயசு இருக்கும். அப்ப இருந்து எனக்கு நான் அந்த லெஸ்பியன் அப்படின்ற அந்த உணர்வை நான் உணர்ந்துக்கிட்டு இருக்கேன். பொண்ணை பார்த்தா தான் ரொம்ப அஃபெக்ஷனாக இருந்துச்சு.
ஒரு 10வது படிக்கும்போது வந்து நான் வந்து இதெல்லாம் கொஞ்சம் திங்க் பண்ணேன். உடனே இது ரொம்ப ஃபீலிங் இருந்தது எனக்கு. அதோடு இல்லாமல் இப்போ அந்த என்னுடைய இந்த செக்ஸ் ஃபீலிங் வந்ததுனால ரொம்ப எனக்கு வந்து இதாகிடுச்சு, அடிக்ட் ஆகிடுச்சு.
இப்போ எனக்கு 14 வயசு இருக்கும், 15 வயசு இருக்கும், மெச்சூரிட்டி ஆகிட்டேன் நான். அப்போ டென்ட்டு சினிமா பார்க்கும்போது எங்களுக்குள்ள கொஞ்சம் மேலே கையை போகிறது இது மாதிரிலாம் இருந்தது. அந்த படம்லாம் பார்க்குறப்போ கொள்கிறப்போ எங்களுக்கு ஒரு செக்ஸஸில் ஒரு மனசு இருந்தது. இது நடுவர எங்களுக்கு எதனால் அந்த மாதிரி வந்ததுன்னா எல்லா விஷயத்தையும் அவங்கக்கிட்ட ஷேர் பண்ணிக்கிறதுனால தான் எங்களுக்கு அந்த மாதிரி வந்துச்சு.
I tried my level best to stop the marriage, but at that part of time I was not sure if I'm really gay. I thought I'm bisexual. But then later on after the marriage, when I had actually have to live with a girl, with a woman, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I couldn't do it because living with a woman is totally different for me because I can't fall in love with her, and lying, living a lie is totally difficult for me.
Irrespective of the various reasons why people belong to these sexual minorities, accepting or rejecting them is a choice that all of us have to make. We'll continue with this debate after a very short break.